We like talking about everything growth related. At Badass Mavericks, we tackle fears and doubts head on. Overcome obstacles and thrive in all areas of your life. Here's your host, Brian Dewald.
So welcome to Badass Mavericks. Today, my guest is Mr. Graham Dunne, former Marine, SWAT officer, sergeant, all-around general badass, father, husband, trainer, entrepreneur. I am just absolutely thrilled to have Graham on today. We're going to talk about so much fun stuff, whether it's firearms and safety and training to staying healthy and mindset. Like some of the mindset stuff we're going to go through today is just going to blow you away. I am so thrilled. Graham, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
All right, this is fun. So just a quick introduction. I do this on all of our shows. We are called BAM, which is Badass Mavericks. Maverick is the name of my boutique little mortgage company. And a Maverick, I figured you might get a kick out of this, Graham, is someone who is unconventional and independent and doesn't think or behave as others do. So if I mention that, like, tell me, you're a Maverick in your own rights, for sure. But when I say unconventional and independent and doesn't think or behave as others do, how does that resonate with you?
I like it. And I would have to say that without sounding auspicious, I think that I'm in that category.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, so I wanted to have you on. Let's talk about, because I'd like to know, you told me a little bit about this when we met, and I would just like to dive in a little bit more just to kind of learn a little bit more about you. And let me kind of preface. So, as I'm doing these podcasts, the whole premise for me is a little selfish, obviously. I like to learn, right? I love to learn and grow, and especially from other people that I look up to and can learn from. And sort of secondarily, I'm hoping that one person that listens to this can gain something from it, right? Whether it's mental headspace capacity or a safety thing. We're going to talk about some of that. But let's start with some career highlights. So you started your at the ripe young age of 18, I presume, in the Marine Corps, is that right?
Yeah, so I was first in the Marine Corps, and then when I got out, I was kind of looking for something to do. And it's funny. My dad was a police officer, and I always said I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
And because he was a great guy, but he was bitter, Okay. And also he had that kind of personality where it was kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Like if you pissed him off, he changed very quickly. He could snap.
Interesting.
And I think that was a result of police work. I really do. So I was always like, I'm not sure I want to go through that and have that toxicity in my life.
Sure.
So then I got out of the Marine Corps, and I needed something to do. And quite frankly, I didn't have a whole lot of skills. I mean, I knew how to shoot, and that was about, all the Marine Corps really teaches you really well is how to shoot and leadership. Those are the two things, which are two big things, right?
Those are great.
Yeah. So anyway, I had a buddy who was a deputy sheriff, and he goes, you should take the test. We get decent paycheck and blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay. And I took the test. I got hired. So I was a deputy sheriff for like a year and a half. That was it.
Okay.
And, nothing exciting there. And then I kind of got the bug then for police work, and I put in, and I got hired and did 25 years with Aurora. And then I got out and I did a year contracting for a company that trained people for U.S. intelligence. I was a trainer for them. And then I went completely on my own like 4 years ago. So now all I do is work for myself.
Yeah, kind of an interesting story to go from, I can totally appreciate going from the Marine Corps into law enforcement. And then, but to branch out on your own as like an entrepreneur type, like that fascinates me for sure, right? That's a lot of the people I know are in that world, and I'm one. So how long were you in the Marine Corps?
Let's see, I did 6 years total. It was a couple of years of reserve time there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you move around quite a bit, or were you in one spot?
I had a couple of duty stations, but nothing interesting. Okay. I mean, quite frankly, my Marine Corps time was I was a peacetime Marine, and I was injured in Desert Storm, but my unit didn't deploy.
Okay.
So yeah, nothing too interesting there, Brian.
Okay. No, all good. That's all good. And I'm going from memory a little bit, but do you have 3 kids?
I do. I've got 3 sons. 3 sons, yeah.
And
all adults now.
Okay. And any military?
I do. I have a son in the Army.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, he's
just recently, right?
Yeah, he's going through helicopter mechanic school right now.
Neat.
And it's interesting the conversation we had about that, because he at first asked what I thought about going in the Marine Corps, and I love the Marine Corps. It's a big part of who I am. It became part of my personality, but I will say there's a lot more promotional opportunities and job opportunities in the other services because they're so much larger. So, my advice to him was I go, I'll go with you to talk to the recruiter because I don't want you to get locked into some contract. And if we don't like him, we'll go next door to the next one. And the first one we met was an Army recruiter, and he was awesome, and I really liked him, and I felt like he was telling us the truth. So we stuck with him and stayed with that. And so, eventually he went in the Army. And, one really proud thing I have about my son is that when he was about 16, he wanted to start shooting competitively with me. And I said, son, I don't want you to embarrass yourself, so we're going to train you up. So I trained him up for a good 6 months before he went to his first competition. And he'd already been through some of my classes, so he wasn't like a complete noob. But so anyway, I took him competition. And at the time, I remember the first one I took him to, there was about 50 people there, and he was the only junior. Everybody else was an adult. So he's like the 16-year-old, skinny-faced, zip-faced, awkward teenager, Sure. And and first time he landed somewhere in the middle of the pack, and these grown men are looking at him like, who the hell is this kid?
Who's this kid?
Yeah. So anyway, when he finally, he ended up getting pretty big in competition with me, and he'd shoot competitively at least once a month, I'd say. And when he went in the Army, his company was 700 people, and they qualified with all their drill sergeants, many of whom were combat veterans, and he shot number one. So he rifle expert out, and all his drill sergeants were like, where did you learn how to shoot?
Yeah.
He goes, well, my dad has this company, And so it was a big moment for him. And he was always, out of my three, he was my one who wasn't a big athlete, wasn't like a superstar in anything. So it was a really big moment for him. Whereas my other two, they were always star quarterbacks, honor roll students. They had everything going. So it was really cool to see him flourish, and finally be the big man on campus with something.
Kind of find his own groove there and go through. Yeah, that is super neat. Wow, good for him.
He had asked me, should I do something like you? I'm really into guns. Should I become an instructor? Should I be a sniper like you were, and this kind of thing? And I said, my advice is that you get a trade. I mean, I know very few people who've made a living out of doing what I'm doing. Very few people. Like I can count them on one hand nationally. So most guys who teach, they teach for somebody else. Like if you go to a gun store and take a gun class, those guys are kind of making peanuts, and the store owner is making the money. So I said, you're really better off finding something you like to do. And he loves to work on engines. So, finding something you like to do and having a trade that you could bring into the civilian world when you're done. So he went with that route. He's a gearhead, so he'd love to work on engines, and that's the way it goes. And so he's flourishing.
Nice. I love that. How was Mama with his option and ideas to go into serve?
Yeah, no, she's all for it. My wife and I are on the same page on most things. And anyway, I'm proud to say also my son is 5th generation military now.
Wow.
Yeah, in our family. And it might be longer. We just only can go back to great-grandfather.
That's as far as you can go back.
My great-grandfather, that is. His great-great-grandfather.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so that's cool.
Super cool. Well, thank you and your family and grandfathers and everybody. It means a lot at our house, and I think it should in every American's house. So that's
I'm very proud that he's continuing on the tradition.
I bet. Yeah, I bet. Proud Papa. Well, so let's talk a little bit about, and you can kind of share some stories. So I met you doing some training. I want to talk about some of the training stuff. I'll bounce around here a little bit, but I really wanted to get on here and talk with you about Jagged Blue Line. So I met you doing some firearm training, which, again, we'll talk about. I got a representing here with the Ragnar Tactical shirt. Yeah, you bet. Super fun course. And like I said, we'll talk more about that. But where's the inspiration? Well, tell us a little bit. What is Jagged Blue Line? And then I want to ask you some questions about the book.
Yeah, so, it's funny. People have asked me why I wrote the book, and I really don't have a good answer for that. There was really no catalyst, other than a couple things stuck in my mind. One is, over the years, I've told people stories, and many times I've heard, man, that's crazy. You should write a book. Right. And that kind of stuck in my head. And then probably 20 years ago, no, it's been probably a decade. But anyway, a guy I worked with, he wrote a book about patrol life. And guy was very articulate, very intelligent. He wrote an excellent book. But it was the average day on patrol as a cop. And what I thought it was lacking in is that some of it was very boring. Like I just go to the police complaint, I go to a barking dog call, then I go to a shooting, and that's kind of how police work is. It's highs and lows. But I'm like, the parts where it's just routine stuff, I don't think people are interested in that. I wanted to write a book of highlights and lowlights. But nonetheless, you know, I'm not putting down his book. It's an excellent book, but I just was like, I think if I ever did that, I would leave out the parts that are not interesting. But I think he was trying to adequately relay the average.
That makes sense.
You know, yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, I couldn't put it down. I think I met you on a Friday, got the book, and I think by Sunday night I was done with it. Like it was, and I'm not a very like prolific reader or anything, but I was just like freaking glued to it. So it's unbelievably entertaining. Yeah. Is it what's the easiest place for folks to get a copy?
Probably Amazon.
Amazon,
yeah. But if you Google the Jagged Blue Line, my website will come up and it'll lead you. I mean, you just click on it, it'll go to Amazon. And I also have an Audible version that can also get on Amazon.
I saw that. Yeah, super cool. Yeah, neat. What can you share a story? Like, do you have a favorite story of the book that's in there, or maybe one that you omitted on purpose? Maybe we could talk a little bit about both. What's your favorite story?
You know, there was a couple things I omitted just because of slander concerns.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you notice throughout the book, I took out names, places, and dates.
Oh, sure.
And that when I first wrote it, I actually had all that in there, and I had two attorneys review it. And they said, you know, you're really opening yourself up for slander if you put this in there, even if it's true. And it is all true. Like everything in the book is true. To the best of my memory, right?
Right.
So, you know, I'll tell you, it's not a bitch and moan book, right? I mean, I really tried not to write it as, you know, as coming across as bitter. Although there are a few moments in there where I bag on people, especially some of our weak leadership.
I picked that up. I agree with you.
How they were toxic to our organization and how they let bad things happen and cowered to, you know, a really small vocal minority on city council and stuff like that. Sure. So anyway, I put in there some of the times that they looked after their own, but jammed other people and bent over and that kind of thing. So nonetheless, if they were to pick up the book and read it, they know I'm talking about it. There is no doubt about it. They're
right.
But the standard for slander is actually pretty high. For starters, not only do you have to be able to prove that it's you they're talking about, but also that other people know it's you, and also that you incur some sort of loss, whether it's financial or to reputation. That's a pretty high threshold. So, you know, by just removing their names, places, and dates, I've taken care of that.
Yeah. Well, and from memory, in the book, it doesn't even talk about who you worked for.
No, I left it all out, and I don't mind saying I worked for Aurora. You know, that's fine, but I did leave it out in the book just as part of that whole, you know, slander concoction.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
So I found it almost, like I said, comedic, and that there's just something, and I've never been a police officer. I've got lots of friends that are law enforcement, so I hear some of the stuff, but like some of the, and you probably saw this on a daily basis, right? But just the absolute lack of common sense. Like I'm reading it and like literally laughing to myself. My wife comes in, she's like, "What the fuck are you laughing at?" I'm like, "This shit's funny." You're like, "Watch." I was like highlighting it and sharing it with her and stuff. So are there any specific stories that you remember that you're just like, this is the most bonehead thing ever?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could say bonehead, just crazy stuff though. But you know, for example, I go to the shots fired call one night, and I'm the first one there, and I pull up my 12 gauge, and I'm creeping up to this parking lot of this liquor store, and I see 9mm shell casings all over the floor, like a dozen of them. I'm like, oh, this is a legit call, you know. Right. And right as I'm there, this dude walks out of the liquor store. And I mean, this is a pretty ghetto neighborhood too. And I said, "Stop, put your hands up," something to that effect. This is like mid 90s, right? Okay. And the dude bolts on me. So I just take off after him. Turns out in retrospect, he had nothing to do with the shooting at all. Oh, he just happened to have a big bag of crack in his pocket, and that's why he ran. But I didn't know that, right? So anyway, I'm chasing him across this main street, and I'll never forget this. He's got probably a good 30 yards. I mean, he turns around to look at me as he's booking just full speed, right? And this car hits him, and he takes out the windshield and completely somersaults over the top of the car, like, and lands on the ground. And I'm thinking, this dude's like dead or close to it. And he just pops up and keeps on running. And I chased him for another like 2 blocks before he finally stopped and wanted to fight. And I had to fight him. and get him in custody. And once he calmed down, his adrenaline came down, then he started feeling the pain. And we took him to the hospital, of course. But, one of the funny parts about it is that the guy driving the car who hit him, he never saw me. Like, I was in the dark across the street. So I still remember, like, the side view of his face, like, as he's hitting the guy. Yeah. And he kept on going, like, he never stopped. So, that was like 20, almost 30 years ago. And I bet that dude went home, put his car in the garage, changed out his windshield. And to this day, he probably thinks he killed somebody.
Wow.
He was probably drunk.
Right.
Yeah. It's just kind of funny, but
wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, that is just crazy. But
there's a lot of those. There's 1,000 of those different kind of stories, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What about what did the SWAT, when you spent time in SWAT, what did that look like?
Yeah, I did 8 years in SWAT, and I was a sniper for SWAT, and it was awesome. And I will say that I think we were probably the busiest team in the state. We averaged about 400 operations a year. I would say the majority of those were high-risk warrants. So banging down doors. So either narcotics or detective bureau or a federal agency would give us a warrant and we'd go execute it for them. Yep. And then we also had barricaded suspects. And barricaded suspect by definition is somebody who's armed who is in a structure. Yep. So we would handle all those. If somebody was armed in a structure and they refused to come out, patrol would try to get them to come out. But if they said, no, screw you, we're not coming out, they'd immediately turn it over to us. So we handle a lot of those. Occasionally we do a manhunt. Occasionally we do executive protection. We did a lot of EP work because we have a Space Force base in our city, formerly an Air Force base. Whenever anyone from POTUS or his staff comes to town, they always land there because that's where Air Force One will land. Because of that, we always supplemented Secret Service. Okay. So I was usually, oftentimes I was up in a hide with a Secret Service sniper and, we're doing advanced work with Secret Service guys and that kind of stuff. And that's how I kind of got into that when I retired. I had people I knew in the business who called me up and they go, hey, we heard you retired. Would you be interested in working for us? So now I do quite a bit of executive protection. I'd probably say I do at least a week a month somewhere. And
that's fascinating.
And I'm going to tell you, I've had a lot of really big names, and I've had a lot of people just billionaires and nobody knows their name. It is not like in the movies at all. So
I'm sure.
Yeah. So, there are some glamorous moments, I've got one client who's an NFL owner, and like whenever they come to Colorado, I'm their guy, and I go on the field with them if they want to talk to the coaches on the sideline or whatever. Got it. And that is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
I've got I've done foreign royalty twice from 2 different countries, and they do some pretty interesting events. So there is some neat stuff, but 95% of it is a lot of hurry up and wait. There's a lot of pressure. There's no room for screw up. A lot of logistics, a ton of logistics that people don't think about, as far as advance, moving with the client, follow. Infill and exfil points, and everything's by the numbers, like down to seconds. So as far as movement goes, so there's a lot of details, and there's a lot of pressure. And if you screw up, you're a 1099. They can just go get on the plane and go home. So there is a little bit of pressure there, and there's a lot of really long hours. I just finished a detail with this family on a ski trip, and it was 8 days. And in 8 days, I did 94 hours in 8 days. I always logged my hours. So, there's not a lot of time to do anything but sleep outside of your shift. But, it's one of those things where it pays well, so that's kind of hard to turn down.
Well, of course.
Yeah, sure. The golden handcuffs, right?
Yeah. Is it normally with you and others, or are you mainly by yourself?
I would say usually you have other people with me. Like the last trip, I had 3 guys with me, but got it. I do occasionally have to do one alone, and I have had some that I did alone where I was like, man, I really should have more people here once I find out like who this person is. Because, if it's just some billionaire, I don't think most people are going to know who they are. But I had one a couple of years back where I found out that he was like maybe the leader in the world in cybersecurity. And, in countries like Russia, North Korea, China, they'd love to see him disappear. And I didn't know that when I first met him. I was talking to one of his executives about it, and I was like, "Oh, really? I probably should have somebody with me here, somebody watch my back."
A little more help.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It is an interesting world. Yeah.
So, and how long have you been doing that? Is it basically since you retired from law enforcement?
Yeah, I really got a lot more into it after I retired.
Sure.
Like I said, and the interesting thing is, when I was on SWAT, we would do it, and the only mission we had was to, save them, right, as far as protection wise. And, we didn't have to have any customer service part of that. And what's interesting is in the private sector, there's a big customer service component to that, as far as making sure down to the car is clean and that, it's stocked with bottled water and, and cords for their phones to charge and tissues. And, some of these things that you go, well, shouldn't a personal assistant do this? But, you're getting paid decent, so you do it.
Sure.
But, in SWAT, we just drive them there, dump them, and we're like, see ya. That wasn't, we didn't have any concerns like that.
Right.
Yeah. But I run around clients' kids. I've taken kids to school many
That's
times.
Funny. Yeah.
And it's kind of funny, when you're driving a kid to school and you've got a nanny in the passenger seat and the kid strapped in the back and they're playing their, kids rock blaring on the radio. And you're like, I feel like, that movie with Vin Diesel, where he's like a nanny.
Yeah.
Feels like a nanny, but he's a protection guy. I've been there, man.
That's
funny.
You. Yeah.
It's funny.
That's
you have to
real
laugh,
life,
But again, you get paid, so you're like, whatever.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I like the entrepreneurial piece. And so, and that might be kind of a good segue into, how you and I met, right? Which is through firearm instruction.
Yeah.
I've taken lots of classes and things like that. So I want to get your take on it. But when I was training with you and I've got full intent to do a lot more, I spend winter times, and you can probably see the palm trees in the back. I'm in Southwest Florida for the winter time.
Yeah. It's freezing here. It's like 1 degree out right now. Yeah.
I saw that. My poor son is at home, not feeling well, trying to keep up on all that. But so let's talk about some of the instruction you do. It's not just firearms, right? Let's talk about some of the other stuff, and then we'll talk about firearms.
Sure. So my company, Ragnar Tactical, interesting start to it. I kind of fell into it. So I was a SWAT guy, and there was a small city in southern Colorado that was creating a brand new SWAT team, and they inquired to our SWAT team. They go, we'd like to get like a course, like a basic 1 week course on just how to do basic stuff. And me and another guy, we go, we'll do it. So we had 40 guys on our team, and I was already a trainer. So I was already a firearms trainer and stuff like this. This is 2002. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So anyway, I thought, I should probably create an LLC just in case, like if somebody gets sued over something, somebody shoots himself in the foot or something, and I get sued. So I created an LLC. I go down there. We did a week-long school, like a basic SWAT skills school, like a day of high-risk vehicle stuff, a day of building clearances, dynamic entries, a day of hostage rescue, that kind of thing, right? So we split it up in like 5 days. Then they invited me back to teach a sniper school. So anyway, all of a sudden, I've got this business, and I'm teaching a few really small police departments, but nothing crazy. It's just a week here, a week there kind of thing. And then I had a buddy say, we really should get into the permit business. There's all kinds of people need permits. And I was actually really against it at first. I was like, I don't want to be training all these goofball people, I just thought it was going to be a shit show. So anyway, he really taught me into it. He bugged me. And finally we were like, all right, I acquiesced and said, okay, let's put on a course. Anyway, the very first class I put on, everybody was awesome. Like they were just regular people, cool people who just want to protect themselves. And it really changed my opinion. I was like, oh, okay, they're not like goofballs and doomsdayers. They're like real cool people. So then he fell out of it, and he picked up a new job and left. And I stayed on with it. And all of a sudden, man, it just became something. I'm doing it like almost every week. And then when I retired, it became my real business. So now I'm teaching a class, I would say almost every week, sometimes twice a week, year round. And so I'm probably teaching about 40 times a week. 40 times a year, somewhere like that, and 40 classes a year. And I teach level 1, level 2, level 3 handgun, level 1, level 2, level 3 carbine, mostly ARs, but I do get some like AKs, Tavors, HKs, some different stuff. Then I teach a combat shotgun course. I teach a precision 1 and precision 2 rifle course, mostly for hunters. There's some guys who are like in a competition stuff who come too. And I teach a level 2 red dot pistol course. And those are my gun courses. Then outside of that, I have a course an edge weapon seminar I teach, which is basically how to use your folding knife as a last resort if you had to, as a defensive weapon, and also how to defend against an edge weapon attack. And then the last course I teach is, there's two more. I teach a gun jitsu course, which is how to fight.
Explain that.
Yeah. So it's a great course, and I actually have one Sunday, but basically we're not using real guns for this. We use training guns, like blue guns, and then we use some airsoft guns for some of the scenarios. But it's basically how to draw while you're being attacked in all these contorted positions on your back, how to create space, how to avoid going to your back, how to get back on your feet if you do end up on your back. I mean, I've been a jiu-jitsu guy for about 28 years now, so that's kind of my thing. And I basically tailored a course towards jiu-jitsu. And how to draw from like a guillotine choke, how to draw in a headlock, in all these contorted positions. It's all the stuff that people should practice, but nobody even thinks about, right? And then I have some scenarios towards the end of the class, kind of what we call stress inoculation drills. And so that's gun jitsu. And then the last one I do is I do an active shooter course, close quarters battle, clearing buildings, like dynamic response, rapid response to an active shooter. And I also do the medical component of that too, which is
I was gonna ask you about that.
The tactical combat casualty care, like addressing gunshot wounds, penetrating trauma, stab wounds, stuff like that. So I'm teaching a whole variety of stuff. One thing is cool is that I was at the academy for 8 years. That was my full-time gig for 8 years. All I did was teach 40 hours a week. And it was really beneficial for two reasons. One is I got all my instructor certifications. Like they sent me to all these schools. And between the 8 years at the academy and 8 years on SWAT, I'd get so many offers for schools. So they'd be like, hey, we got this 2-day school coming up from HK or whatever. And I was like, I'll do it. So I was that guy. I was like a training whore. I would go to everything, right? And I once counted them up. I went to like 22 instructor schools and like 60 or 80 tactical schools. And, some of them were like a couple weeks, right? I love to train. So that's kind of my thing, right? So anyway, it was cool because I picked up all these schools, and I also picked up how to teach in front of a group. After about a year, I was really comfortable in front of a group. I could go in there and talk and not get nervous and stuff like that. And I don't think anybody's born with that. I think it takes time to become really comfortable. So that's where I'm at now. And thing is that I'm not dogmatic at all. And I think so many instructors are, meaning like they say you have to do things by my Bible, so to speak, my Bible of firearms or my Bible of jiu-jitsu. For me, it's what works for you. Because what works for a 100-pound female may not work for me, and vice versa. So, we have different bodies, we have different strengths, we have different ages, we have different abilities, and, what works for you may not work for me, again, and vice versa. So, I like the kind of cafeteria approach where you take what you want and you leave the rest. So, I mean, if I was to create the ultimate system of doing things, I would pick and choose from different systems. And I went to so many schools where most of it I'm like, I'm not sure. But there was like one really or two really good things. I'm like, man, I'm going to steal those. Those are awesome. So now I'm at the point where I can really dissect things because I've seen what everybody does. And I'm a big believer in continuing that training. I still go to a class somewhere else at least once a year for a couple of days just to see what other people do. And I really believe that if you don't know what other people do, how do you know what you do is worth anything, right? So you have to be able to have that knowledge so that you can dissect it. The unfortunate thing is most people, if they only go to a couple of courses, they just don't have the knowledge to dissect other people's stuff. They can't think critically and go, well, that's not great. I have people go through courses and they come to me and they go, I went through this course and it was awesome. And then they come through my course and they go, you know what? Now that I've been through your course, that course wasn't awesome. It kind of sucked.
Agree.
That kind of thing, right? So I get that kind of feedback a lot. And I say, well, if nothing else, it was a good experience because you saw what not to do. Or, now you can compare and contrast techniques. If I show you 2 different ways to clear a type 3 malfunction, you can decide which one you think is best. Now you know 2 ways instead of 1 way, right? So I think there's a lot to that, to think critically. But you have to have a knowledge base to be able to think critically, right? And I will say, like, when I first got out in the Marine Corps, I only knew 1 way of doing things. And I was like, the Marine Corps way is the way to go. And then when I got in police work and started seeing other ways, I'm like, some of the things are the way to go. Other things, not so much. Yeah.
Well, and then through all your years of instruction and training and practice and, everything else, you've been able to, share. And I love your approach of maybe not just one idea, but one, let's kind of think about this. And then the other thing that it was one of my big takeaways from your first course that I went to was just the training piece, right? Like if you don't do that often enough, it's very easy for regular old civilians like me to forget. So
absolutely, you've really got to keep that going, right? I mean, you can stay on the bike. If you don't ride the bike, it gets old. So there's an interesting study that was done with college students many years ago, and the Dunning-Kruger effect. And the Dunning-Kruger effect is that like 95% of the world thinks they're better at any given task than they actually are. So for example, they go to the range and shoot once a year and they're like, man, I'm pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And they don't know any better, right? I go to the range at least every week and shoot year round. And I know there's a lot for me to improve. Like I look and I go, man, I could be so much better, especially in little areas, right? And the same in competition. Like there's certain things that come in a competition. I'm like, I would rather do this because I'm better at that. So I try to work on my areas where, I see a flaw. But so my thing is that in that study, the 10% of the world that doesn't have overestimated abilities, they think that they're not good enough and they're actually pretty decent. And I'm definitely in that category because I'm super self-critical. Like, again, I shoot, every week, and yet I sometimes I go to the range and go, man, I could be so much better. Like, that sucked. I need to make myself better and train harder, right? And I would much rather be in that camp, though, than in the camp that has overestimated abilities where you watch John Wick on the TV and you go, I could do that.
Right.
Actually, totally. You couldn't. Yeah.
Well, and from a student's perspective, it's really neat to hear you say that because it's just reiterates that you need to keep training. You need the practice. You need the reps, if you will.
Right. I read in a concealed carry, I think it's Concealed Carry magazine, which is a USCCA magazine. It's a pretty good read. I read an article and they said that 3% of people who get permits continue to train. The other 97%, they go, I'm good. I went through a class and they put it in a vault or under the bed or whatever they do, and they never touch it again. And that's very disheartening to me.
I agree. It's a little scary, actually.
I mean, I think people should continue that training constantly, right, throughout their lives. And it's a never-ending journey. You're never going to get to where you really want to be, in my opinion. I know I won't. I'm never going to get to the level of expertise I want to be at.
Sure.
And, if you ever watch me shoot on the range or do a competition, you'd be like, Graham, what are you talking about?
Right.
I know.
Right. To the average Joe, it's impressive.
To the recreational shooter, they're like, oh, right. To me, I'm like, man, there's holes in my game. I could be faster. I could be smoother. I could be more accurate, right? There's always things to work on. And I think you'd find that with anybody who's really challenging themselves, is that they've got that lust to make themselves better. And this is what the whole podcast is about, right? And
getting better.
One of the things that, I've never considered myself the smartest guy in the room by any means. Sure. One area where I pride myself on, though, is motivation. When it's like sniper school, it's freezing and you're losing you're feeling in your fingers because you're so cold, and you're peeing yourself because you can't get up. You're laying in a hide or whatever. And there's dudes who are just Adonis athletes who are going, fuck this, and they're tapping out.
Oh, sure.
So the ability to go, no, I'm not going to let it get me. I think is this is so much more important than below the neck, right? So that's one thing I've always prided myself on, is on motivation. I'm very motivated. Nobody has to tell me to go to the gym. I don't need a goal like a 5K or a contest for whatever. I get there every day and fucking crush it. I don't need a partner to do it. That's something I'm so glad that I have in me, that it seems like so many people don't, right? They have to have some sort of goal or something, and not that there's anything wrong. If that's what you have to do it, fine. But most people don't even train, right? Yeah, or they train once in a while and they fall off the wagon, and that whole consistency, whether it's physical fitness, whether it's martial arts, whether it's shooting, is the name of the game. For example, so I'm 56 years old, and I often have people ask me, they go, man, how do you stay in shape, being 56, And my thing is that I have been consistent in the gym for 25, 30 years. Like I never miss workouts. If I have to miss a workout because like I'm going to work a 15-hour day or something, I'll do a double the next day.
Okay.
If I have to, I'll get up at 3 a.m. If I have to, I'll work out on my lunch. I always watch what I eat. Like I am super, like, not to say I don't have cheat meals and stuff like that, because I do.
Sure.
But day to day, I'm very consistent. In my opinion, consistency is the name of the game. That means week after week, month after month, year after year.
Yep.
right? So
That's
many
gold.
people do it on what I call the installment plan, where they do like a month really hard or 6 months really hard, and then they fall off the wagon and they don't train for a couple months. And I mean, not to say that it wasn't valuable what you did, but you've just lost a lot of that, right? And same with the guy who goes to the gym and then goes to McDonald's and has a McFlurry. So like one of my clients has, who I do bodyguarding for. It's kind of funny, but his wife doesn't know about it. And
oh gosh,
we always go to McDonald's and get a Big Mac and a McFlurry after he hits the gym. And you'd know who he is. He's one of the most recognizable people in the world. But it's just kind of funny to me that, you know, I'm not going to say you just, all those calories you burned, you just suck them back in. But, you know, that's what
and probably more, right?
Yeah, exactly. That 2,000 calorie McFlurry or whatever.
Yeah, you didn't just burn that in the gym.
Yeah, loaded with sugar. So here's the thing. That's my advice to people when they're like younger and they go, man, how do I stay in shape? You know, when, you know, because I'm falling off the wagon, it's all about consistency.
Right.
You know, it all works. It's all about consistency. But it'd be the same with shooting a gun. It'd be the same with martial arts. Whatever, you know, you choose to practice. I think that, you know, that consistency of getting in there and proper training too, right? So not just going through the motions. I'll give you an example. So I golf, not very well. And anyway, you know, when I warm up on the driving range, if I take 2 big buckets of balls and hit them, I find myself just starting whacking them because I just want to get through these buckets because I know it's a lot of balls, right? And if I just do 1 bucket, I really take my time and focus on each hit. So it's actually more beneficial for me to do 1 bucket than 2 buckets. So it's kind of the same thing with getting on the range. You know, I would rather just shoot 50 rounds in drills and really focus on that than shoot 200 rounds and just, it's a chore and I just want to get through it. Right. So not to say there's not days I don't shoot 200 plus, but
no, I get it.
I want the quality, not the quantity.
I love the kind of a lot of things that you just said there, but you know, I've always been a big fan of a mentor, right? Whether it's a business coach or a marriage coach or a spiritual coach or a money coach or guide or mentor or something. I think anything that you can do to improve your life in some capacity and learn from somebody that's better. Like I'm never going to take money advice from somebody that's broke, right? I want the guy that's handling my money to be fucking loaded because I know he's doing a good job, right? I don't want to take marriage advice from somebody that's on their 2nd, 3rd, 4th marriage, right? Like so I love what you just said just about the consistency. You know, discipline is another great word that gets used a bunch, but you know, and if I can give you a plug for your firearm instructing, like that it's gold, right? If you want to get better at safety and you know, all of the things and some of the things like in between that the normal person, right, like me doesn't think about, right? The clearing, the you know, what happens when this happens kind of a thing, right? And it's just, gosh, it's just, I love everything you just said there. Well, I just wanted to, you know, there's a lot of folks out there, call it misguided, misinformation, whatever it is, but for somebody that is maybe a little shy about firearms or guns in general, do you have any advice for somebody that says, listen, I've never shot a gun, I've never held a gun. Do you have anybody that comes to you and what is that conversation?
I get all that all the time. And, you know, I really go out of my way to be very humble and respectful and patient with people. I only lose patience when somebody's an asshole, which is incredibly rare. I mean, I've only had that happen once or twice out of, you know, 23 years of being in business or whatever. Wow. People are generally, you know, they want to soak in the, you know, the knowledge and learn, right? So, and I love that when people are earnest students.
Same.
But, you know, the biggest advice I give to somebody, if you're like thinking it over, but you're intimidated by it, is don't go out with your buddy. They're going to teach you bad habits, probably bad safety. You need to get formal training from a good instructor. Now, here's where the problem arises. Is my belief is that most people in my business are clowns. I really do. And I'm really not trying to say like I'm all that and everybody else sucks, because there are some really good trainers out there. I can name probably 5 off the top of my head in the Denver metro area that I like. But for every one of those, there's 10 who is an absolute goof. And what I mean by goof is they're not necessarily bad people. They don't have the background and experience to be doing what they're doing. And many of them are good shooters, but they don't have the ability to impart that knowledge onto their students.
Makes perfect sense.
Which is a big deal, right? So, you know, you really have to be the complete package. And I would say that anybody who hasn't had a lot of training time as an instructor is in that category. So, one of the benefits I had was being full-time instructor for 8 years, and I got to see pretty much everything and feel my way through what works and what doesn't work with people. So, it's unfortunate there's so many boobs out there. And the thing is like these students, they go to the local gun store to get this course, and they come back and they go, man, it was really, really good. And, after my course, they're like, I just didn't know, I thought it was good and it sucked.
Right.
Yeah. So, it's unfortunate. I mean, there's no like really good place to vet instructors, and it is very easy to become a firearms instructor, unfortunately. Now, I'm a life member of the NRA and I'm a big supporter, but I will say this, their civilian training program is very lacking. Their law enforcement training program is excellent. So they have a law enforcement instructor school that's 44 hours per weapon system, and they actually have a failure rate. Like they have a qualification, people fail. Not a high failure, probably 10 to 20%, but people do fail. And that's per weapon system. So one for pistol, one for shotgun, one for rifle, etc. They have their civilian program. You have to go through a 1-day user course and then a 2-day instructor course, and everybody passes, and it's kind of a joke. So the problem is that probably 95% or more of instructors teaching the stuff have gone through that civilian program, not the law enforcement program. And another good program is the USCCA instructor program is pretty good from what I've heard. I've got some friends who've gone through it, and also the Colorado Post, and each state has their own post, Peace Officer Standards and Training. They usually have a week-long firearms program for each weapon system. And those are good courses too, and they actually do have a qual, and people fail. So anything that has a standard, right? But so unfortunately, most people just go through that minimalist course, and then now they're out certifying people and teaching people. And again, I'm not saying they're bad people or they're even bad instructors. I'm just saying it's inadequate. It's not what you need. You need a lot of time, a lot of experience, and a lot of time in front of a group to be able to impart your knowledge and articulate your message, right?
Yeah. Well, and I love what you said. I can relate to that on a couple of things as you're talking. I've been in the mortgage business for 22 years, and there's handfuls of us. I'm not just patting myself on the back, that are really, really great. And there's the bell curve, right? I think it can be said about any profession, whether it's my business or firearm instructions or attorneys or doctors or anything else, right? There's a handful of them that are really good, and if you haven't experienced one of those, you may not know the difference, or and some people don't care, but I can attest that I have gone through some of your coursework, and it's by far the best I've ever.
Thank you very much.
I feel very happy.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I'm looking forward to doing more. What about you? We touched on this a couple of minutes ago, but I love, again, just kind of learning, and I want to know a little bit more. So you mentioned you're 56. You're in incredible shape.
Thank you.
What's your routine look like? Is it a daily? Just share with us a little bit of that.
So I've kind of gone to a less is more. As I've gotten older, I just don't think you can recover like you can when you're in your 20s or even your 30s. So, I do 6 days a week. I take 1 day off for mental health. I do 3 days of cardio, and I do 3 days of lifting. But my cardio is not like all aerobic. It's aerobic and aerobic mix. And for people who don't understand, aerobic is basically 30 to 60% of your max heart rate. Anaerobic is 80% to 100% of your max heart rate. So, that being said, I think a mix is best. So, I'll go for a jog, but I also run sprints. So the jog is the aerobic, the anaerobic is the sprints, right? So I still box, some jiu-jitsu. I run, I do rowing machine. I star climber, but I make it hard. I don't hold on the handles. And, I will say that, I like to mix it up. I get bored. And so I might do 20 minutes of this, 20 minutes of that, 20 minutes of something else. So, I really do like to mix it up, and I think that helps you mentally. I'm not sure so much. I believe in muscle confusion. I've read a lot on this kind of stuff, and I've gone to some schools. And, I was a fitness instructor at the academy, so they sent us to a couple of different schools and stuff. And but I do think that you need to mix it up for your mental health. So for example, if all you do is the same exercise every time, you're going to get bored with that, right? So I think you need to mix it up. But that's my regular routine, and then I watch what I eat. I could kick it up if I had to. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but I fought forever. So I boxed in the Marine Corps, and I had dozens and dozens of amateur bouts, and then I had 3 kickboxing fights and 4 MMA fights, and 1 pro boxing. So I did that over a span of like 20 years, and it was never my full-time gig. It was always like I hate to say it, but it was a hobby for me.
Right.
Even though,
Sure.
at the end I was making a little bit of cash on it. But it was a cool experience. To me, it was more of a challenge. I just loved the challenge of it. When you step into a ring or a cage in front of thousands of people, I mean, it's like jumping out of a plane, man. I mean, the adrenaline's up, and you have that moment there where you go, man, am I really just sitting across from this dude, and the only person in here is a referee? Oh shit.
Yeah.
Why do I
get
do
real
this to myself? Yeah. So, all that said, it was a great experience. So I got to fight in Europe twice. I fought all over the United States. And, one cool thing was in 92, I went to the Amateur Boxing Internationals in London, and I was the only American who won. They sent 5 that year. And so that was really cool. I silvered at the World Games. And so I had some cool stuff. I lost the decision on gold, and to this day I'm pissed about it because I went up in weight class, and I felt like I was a better fighter than him, but I gassed, and he had better cardio than I did, and I slowed down, and he just beat me on points. And I said it was actually an epiphany. I was like, I'm never going to lose a fight again because of poor conditioning. And then I became a conditioning monster. Wow. And it got to the point where I think it won me some fights. There was times where I saw a guy start mouth breathing, and every time you see a guy mouth breathing, they're starting to decline.
You got the leg up now.
And I was feeling fine, so that's when I'd step on the accelerator and pick up the pace. And I think that won me a couple of fights that I might not have normally won. Wow. So, that cardio was big, right? So, but when I trained for a fight, I mean, I'd have a 6-week training camp that was just ridiculous. And I'd lose tons of weight, and but my cardio was amazing, and it was cool. But I mean, it was a really good experience, and I touch on that a little bit in the book. I don't talk about a whole lot, but I threw some photographs in there and stuff, just for old times.
I remember seeing
some of those. About it, and it does actually also it does play into a couple of the stories, because there's a couple stories where I chase people down or fight people, and it kind of, having a background really helped me out in that respect. Like I say, one of my favorite expressions is in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And so even if you have a little bit of knowledge in something, whether it's martial arts or whether it's shooting or whatever, you're going to destroy like 90% of the world. So I really believe in that. And I think that's just so important is that get that self-motivation, however you need to do it. If you don't just inherently have it, you need to somehow change your life and fill your life with positive stuff. I'm a big believer in not bringing negative into my life. So I had this epiphany many years ago when I was going through a very hard military school, and it was brutal, and I was really struggling mentally to get through it because of the weather and because of the physical conditioning. It was just tough, man. And there was guys, my buddies, complaining, man, I'm fucking freezing, and this sucks, and I'm always hungry, and goddamn, they're running us to death. And I had another guy who was with me who was cracking jokes like, we're so cold, I'm like losing fingers, feeling in my fingers, and I'm just miserable, and he's busting jokes and making me laugh. And I was like, the epiphany was, I want to hang out with that guy, not those guys. That positivity, I want to suck it in, right? And I was probably 21 at the time, and I just remember that was such a big impact with me. So throughout my life, and this is advice I gave to my 3 sons, is like, when you're associated with somebody who is negative, I'm not saying block them out of your life. I mean, sometimes they're family, sometimes they're a good friend, but maybe distance yourself just a little bit. Yeah. And, when it comes to the positive people in your life, that's the people you need to surround yourself with. Right. And,
man, I love this.
And just keep that going. Right. And so, I listen to podcasts all the time and motivational stuff about working out and entrepreneurial stuff. Like Bedros Keuilian, for example, he's all about working out and entrepreneur. So he's kind of a dual fix there. So there's a bunch of those out there, though. And I really, occasionally I'll read something or listen to something that is kind of negative, and I actually kind of force myself away from it. So, because I'm getting pissed, and it's changing my attitude. And I have the ability now, as I get older, to go, I realize what it's doing to me. Stop doing that. Wow. So not to say I don't ever get in bad moods. Not to say I'm never negative, because I do. Sometimes I'm negative. But the idea
you can
is
recognize it.
Don't make that your life. Right. Yeah. And it's like one thing I used to tell people when they worked for me in police work. So, I was a supervisor for the last 17 years, and I usually have 8 to 10 guys a year on my team. I say guys, I mean male and female, but I'd have 8 to 10 people a year on my team. And, the first day, I'd always have a talk with them, and I'd give them my expectations as a leader. This is what I expect for you when you do this, if this happens. And going down to interactions. If you have a problem with another officer, I expect you to handle alone like big boys, big girls. If I have to get involved, it's going to get nasty. So you need to fix that without me getting involved. Now, look, if you have to get me involved, I understand. But try and avoid it if it's just petty shit.
Sure.
Just be adults. Don't come running, right?
Right.
So, and then I said, your expectations of me should be that I'm going to look after you as best I can. I'm going to get you time off. If you want to get a special assignment, I'm going to do what I can to prepare you for that, blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, do you have any other expectations that I haven't thought of? So this was a conversation I'd have every year. Defining expectations when you're a leader is huge.
Yeah.
Because then if they fuck up, they can't say, well, you never told me, right? I didn't know that's what you wanted. So I had a long list of stuff that I had compiled over the years that were just little things that, I think that people needed to know. So here's the thing though, but I would always tell them this too, is also, understand this, you are not that important. And what I mean by that is this, when it comes to the daily activities you do, yes, you're going to help people. Yes, you're going to catch bad guys. You're going to do some stuff that will really help people in life, right? But in the end, the police department ran fine before you got here, and it'll run fine when you leave, right? So don't make it your life. Don't make it your identity. Don't get too hung up on yourself. We had this board, a plaque, and it had a plaque of everybody who'd done 20 plus years in the police department, and there was tons of them, and hundreds of names, right? Maybe thousands. And it had their name and their retirement date. And then I said, someday somebody's going to be standing in front of those plaques, reading the names, and they're going to see Graham Dunne. Never heard of him.
Right.
So the thing is, I noticed in my career, I knew probably half a dozen people who killed themselves. And it was always after they retired, like 2 years after, a year or 2 years after. And what it was is, in my opinion, and I remember these people very well, is that they had made police work their identity.
That's their identity.
And when they retired, they're like, they had nothing left, right? So I recognized that at a pretty early age in my career. So my thing was, I'm going to have outside friends and outside activities. And, it's not that I don't hang out with other cops, because I do. And I still occasionally bump into ones. But, the thing is that I found that when I hung out with the other guys at work, all we did was talk about work.
Got it.
And we went back to, and it was always back to that negativity of, fuck that guy, city sucks, blah, blah. It's pretty toxic, right? So, and it's funny, I have a couple friends who are still on the job, like they're getting ready to retire. And whenever we go out, like we'll go out for dinner with our wives, for example, I have to take them off the course, because they'll start talking about work and how much it sucks and how much they hate the chief or the city council or whatever it is, right? And I'm like, all right, let's change topics, because it's you're spiraling down that negativity hole, right?
Sure.
And I just don't want to go there. I mean, I find it interesting to a certain extent, but within moderation.
Yeah, and you don't want that to be the center of attention for the entire conversation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? As a cop, I mean, it is it really does overtake your world. People just have no idea, especially in a big city. Maybe not so much in a small town, but I think small towns, they have their own set of problems. They do. They know everybody. Everybody's related. Right. So in other ways, it could be actually more political, just in different ways. They don't have the call load, they don't have the crime, but they have other, negatives that they have to deal with.
A few moments ago, and I don't remember exactly how you said it, but it reminded me of, I've got conversations with, I've got a really tight kind of an inner circle, if you will. Donna is one of them, actually, that introduced you and me together. And I just always said, I wanted to get your thoughts on maybe this last little piece, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. But, I've always had this idea that if I hang around 5 smokers, I'm going to be the 6th, right? If I hang around 5 millionaires, I'm going to be the 6th. If I hang around 5 really great golfers or shooters or whatever, I'm going to be the 6th. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's 100%. And Bedros Keuilian talks about it. He says you are the 5 people that you hang out the most. And I probably hang out with 3 or 4 people the most. If it's outside of family, maybe 2 people that I really hang out with a lot, maybe 3, right? Okay. But yeah, I definitely think you take on those people. Like you take on parts of their personality as they take on parts of your personality, right? And if they're motivated, you'll be motivated. If they're negative, that will play into your personality too. So I 100% am in accordance with that. And it just goes back to what I said in that, I think you need to separate yourself a little bit from negative people in your life.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and it adds to whether it's separating the negative people and also adding, like if I want to be more in shape, I need to hang around guys like you that are in better shape, right? If I want to be a better shooter, I got to hang around guys like you that are better than me. It's just, there's so much gold in those pieces of those conversations. I just wanted to highlight that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the only way to do it. And, and also the self-help part of it, the podcast, reading.
Yes.
I'm not a big reader. But what I do is I sometimes struggle with reading. Like it's hard for me, meaning
Same.
just to sit down, not the actual reading, but just to sit down and do it. Right. I'm like, I don't want to do it. I'd rather watch TV or listen to a podcast. It's just because it's the easy factor. Right. And so, that's my my head telling me, take the easy road. Right. If I'm, and I've had that too, when I'm driving to training, like I'm driving to jujitsu and I know, it's going to be just a brutal workout. We're beating the shit out of each other. My inner just going, you don't have to do this. You could just turn around and go home. And, you have to dismiss those voices in your head and go, no, I need to suck it up. Adversity is what makes you a better human being, doing stuff that's hard.
I did a podcast shoot with a family friend of ours who's a family therapist, and she talks about it's called neuroplasticity, right? And it literally, your brain grows when you're doing something that is hard, right? And have you ever heard of, I'm sure you have, Andy Frisella is a guy who's got a big podcast. He's the founder of what's called 75 Hard. I've done that quite a few times. And he calls it the inner bitch voice or the boss voice, right? Which one are you going to listen to? You're going to listen to the bitch voice or the boss voice. And I think finding people that have those boss voices and can encourage you is just gold. And I don't think people realize that kind of stuff is out there. So maybe that's the part of the, if nobody's into, police work and shooting and things that were there, if somebody latches on, it's just like, man, if there's one person I can look up to maybe help me with that, get a stronger boss voice kind of thing, like maybe we can connect with somebody on that level today. So that's my hope.
Absolutely. And I mean, when it goes back to the firearms, we touched on this earlier. I understand people have fear of firearms. I get that. Sure. And actually healthy respect is very, very good.
Sure.
You don't want to lose respect for your guns, which so many people do. They start training and then all of a sudden they're pointing guns at each other and they have negligent discharges and stuff. I think you have to be very strict on your firearm safety, and that's something you should never lose, is that respect.
Yes.
Right. So, I'm sure from going through my class, you saw that with me. I am very strict on firearm safety. I'm not an ass about it, but I'm very strict about it. Yeah. Yep. So, when it comes to all this, I mean, it all comes down to this. Like sometimes the stuff I like to do, like shoot, I have no problem getting out there and doing it. The stuff that, that is hard to me, like for example, reading,
right.
I have to set myself a regimen. So I will do 20 pages a day. And if that's too much, I'll do 10 pages a day, whatever you set the limit to be, but at least you're doing it. And it might take you a month to get through a book, but at least you're doing it, right? Yeah. So, versus not doing it, so self-help books and, and I'm one of those, like if I read half the book and I'm just not getting it, I'll start a different book. But I've had a lot of books where I've read them back to front and go back to them 5 years later and read them again because I thought it was so important. Like it really resonated with me, and I'm like, I've kind of forgotten it. I want to read it again. So I'm big into that. I think that all that positive affirmation is huge. It really does make the difference between if you're going to do well in life and if you're not, and it's all on you, right? I mean, people bitch and moan about every complaint in their life. Whether it's, I don't have the time or, people are against me or the system's set up against me. You know what? It's not. System's not set up against anybody. That's an excuse. Everybody's got an equal chance here. Some people actually have more of an equal chance. That's a bunch of bullshit. So don't buy into that victimization mindset and just fucking do it, right? You look at people of any demographic, they're on the top level of anything. Whether it's sports, whether it's industry, whether it's finance, whatever, right?
Yep.
My little world is shooting and tactics, right? And I'm not saying I'm on top, but I do find, and again, I've never been the smartest guy in the room, but I do have that motivation that was somehow in me, and it makes me want to be the best at whatever I do. And if I fall short, hey, that's on me. That's nobody else's problem, right? And it's just like, being in the military and being a cop, people, will thank me for my service and stuff. And that's cool. I appreciate that. But, one thing that does irk me is so many people complain and they file disabilities and stuff and they don't really need them. Look, if you've truly been disabled, you deserve everything. plus more, right? But there are so many people who don't. And I know of guys who they go in and they fake a hearing test so they can get a payout. I know guys who say, I've got PTSD. They literally Google what is the symptoms, and they go in there and it's a psychologist that, and now they're getting a payout and free medical for life, right? And I just will refuse to do that. It was my honor to serve my country. It was my honor. And I don't need to steal, for my country for the rest of my life. I did it because I wanted to do it. I did it because I felt like, what's the word I'm looking for? I felt like it was a duty. Like I wanted to serve because I was, I grew up in another country till I was 10 years old. And I felt like I owed my country for letting my family come to live here.
Wow.
So, and my parents, even though my dad was Irish and my mother's English, she's still around. So they always taught me, hey, this is the greatest country in the world. You need to be proud of being here, and you can be anything you want if you try hard. So don't buy into this victimization shit. My folks, they always flew an American flag out front, and they became American citizens. They were very proud of it. And not to say they didn't have love for their own country too.
Sure.
But they're like, we're Americans now.
Right.
So I do look with disdain a little bit at these people who want to, change our country and make it more like theirs. If it's so great, go home.
Go back. Yeah. Why are you here?
This is our country. Assimilate. And it's just like Pete Hegseth. I saw him on the TV recently.
Yeah, because
our new Secretary of Defense talking about diversity stuff. He's like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "We need to come together," and I agree. I've always felt that.
Yeah.
We need to come together for the common goal, right? Can we be different? Sure, but come together for the common goal and stop making a big deal out of all. Dividing people up is create animosity and resentment and stuff like that, right? So we need to come together, and it's like we're in the same uniform in a military unit. Yeah. So I'm glad we're moving away from those just ridiculous mindsets, in military and in just common life, business and everything else. I'm glad we're moving away from those. I could go on and on and on about that for hours.
Yeah, we'll shoot another podcast on that one at some point. Man, I can't thank you enough. Like this was way, I knew this was going to be good, but like, I didn't think I'd get goosebumps as much as I did. Like there was so much gold in here. Some of my top nuggets were, the leadership. You had some really amazing, I can't wait to go back and watch some of the little nuances that you were talking about leadership. Like, listen, if I was unclear on something, it's because I didn't bring it up. That's my bad, right? Let's fix it and move on. I loved that piece. I love all the stuff that you talk about, just training and mindset and discipline and, being excited about that. There's just some huge nuggets in there for me that I agree with 1,000,000%. So, thank you for sharing your wisdom. And one more plug for the book. If you can stop what you're doing right now and go to Amazon and look for Jagged Blue Line, you will not be disappointed. It's very, very entertaining. I loved it. I couldn't put it down. I'm like Graham, where I read 10 to 20 pages at a time. And I picked it up on a Friday after we were done training, started it that night, and I was done by Sunday. So it's a very, very, very fun book.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Yeah. The Jagged Blue Line has been very cathartic for me, and same with the audiobook. I mean, it's just been a great experience just doing it. And I love hearing back from people when they read it, telling me what they thought, and I always ask people, I mean, do you have anything negative? And I haven't got that yet, but I'm open to it. It's not going to hurt my feelings.
Constructive criticism, maybe. Yeah.
I'm interested, but people seem to really enjoy it. And also it seems to make people think a little bit. And I've heard that several times from people, like it's changed their opinions. And that is really cool to me too.
Yeah, I agree. How can people connect with you? What is it? Instagram an easy way to, especially if they want to do some training and stuff like that?
Yeah. So Ragnar Tactical. It's ragnartactical.com is my website. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and I have a YouTube page with some instructional videos. I probably got 25, 30 instructional videos on there.
Awesome.
Each video is like 5 minutes long, like how to do a combat reload, how to clear malfunctions, the principles of marksmanship, draw stroke, just random stuff.
Great stuff.
I even have one or two on how to clean guns. I've got one on how to clean a pistol and one how to clean an AR. So yeah, I mean, they're on there, and they're not like super high quality, but they're not super amateur either. They're kind of in the middle. Yeah. And people tell me they like them, that they get a lot out of them for refreshing their memory. So it's free.
Awesome.
Yeah. But ragnartactical.com, and the book again is thejaggedblueline.com.
Love it. Thank you, Graham. It was an honor to have you on the show today, and let's do this again sometime. I had a blast doing it with you.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
And we could always have a talk on, say, mindset or something like that, because we could
go
on and on about that.
For sure. I'm going to take notes. We'll book that for sure, because I got a lot of good stuff to add there. So until then, we'll look forward to that.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Badass Mavericks. Remember that you have the potential and the superpower to achieve everything in life. All you must do is step out of your comfort zone, tap into your courageous self, and chase your dreams with a strong, positive mindset. For more inspiring conversations like this one, check out more episodes of the show at www.mavericklendingsolutions.com. Do not stop this momentum of building the fulfilling life you truly deserve. That's all for now. See you on the next one.